would like now to just go over some setup if you would like to run the software that goes with this book, which is highly recommended. You can run it, you can modify it, you can experiment, you can build on top of it. So this is the repository that we have on GitHub, which is public. You can go here and clone it, and this is how you would copy the URL for cloning it. And once you have it, you can go and set up. We have a lot of dependencies, and the best way to keep your dependencies separate from the rest of your computer is to use a virtual environment. And so we recommend, or I would recommend for you to install a virtual environment for this project and activate it before you start running the programs. So before that, let's talk about the Python version. So right now, the Python version available, publicly available, is 3.12, the latest one. So we can see it at Download Python. If we go here to Download Python, Python downloads, you can see that the latest that they recommend is 3.12.4. It's likely that by the time you look at it, there would be newer versions. So it should, I would think that these programs will work with newer versions as well. I myself ran them with 3.11 and 3.12, and all the videos that you will be watching where I run the programs, I was using Python 3.12 on a Windows machine. So if you want to download 3.12 or 3.11, even though you already have a newer version, you could still do this by scrolling down, and then you can look at a specific release and install it. So if we went to the 3.12, we would end up, or I think this is a 3.12.3, so we would end up in this page, and then we could download it from here. And then you will have two different Pythons on your machine, and there is a way to use whatever Python you want. We will see in a second. But you could definitely try to work with the latest Python if it's already newer than that. If you have an older one, 3.10 or 3.9, I would recommend to just install 3.12 or newer and make that your main Python, unless you have some reason not to make it the main one. But let's say that you have the Python 3.12 or whatever version you want. You would want to create a virtual environment. So you would go to where the files are, where your local repositories are, and there are several kinds, or there are two main kinds of virtual environment. One is a Conda, and one is what we call Venv for virtual environment, which is what I have done. So when you do that, it will create a virtual environment with the default Python that you have installed in the system. So you can see here that let's say that your default Python is otherwise, but you already also downloaded and installed 3.12. So you can write it like that in Windows or in other machines like this, and then it will create a virtual environment with that particular version that you have on your computer, but is not the default. So even if you have Python 3.15 or whatever it is in the future, when you actually see this video and you have it installed, you can still download 3.12 and create a virtual environment with 3.12 if this is what you want. You can also try the 3.15, and there could be changes, there could be issues, but usually they are solvable. So you could just try your luck with the newer Python version. But this is if you do this, you know that you ran it exactly the same way that I did in the videos that you see here. So I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, and in Code the way it looks like, if I open the local repository, I will have the chapters. I have this README file that I'm showing you is actually here, and then I created this Venv in the same place. That's what you normally do. You would create the virtual environment in the same folder of the repository. And then we have a requirement file that comes with the repository. So the best way, once you installed or created a virtual environment, first activate it, and this is how you would activate it in Windows, and this is how in Linux. But also, if you use code, there is a plugin that's called a Virtual Environment Manager. Maybe we can see it here. So if you go to the extensions and look for Virtual Environment Manager, in my case, it is installed already. And when you have that, and you have several others, but this enables me to just find the environments and activate them from here. And you see that I actually have a second environment. We will talk about it soon, but once you have an environment, you can go and activate it by doing open in terminal, and then it's activated, and you can see it here. When the name is added to the prompt, then you know that the virtual environment has been activated. And then even if you close this terminal, it's still active for this window. So you can see the version of Python that was used to create this version. So whenever you activate it, this Python is what's going to run. And now that you activated it, you can install dependencies either one by one by using pip install this and pip install that, like is mentioned in the book. And you can do it chapter by chapter, but the recommended way is to use that requirement file and just do it all at once by running this command here, pip install -r requirement text, and this will run for a while, but it will give you all the requirements you need for all the chapters. And once you're done with it, whenever you go to that virtual environment and activate it, you will have what you need to run the programs. You won't have to worry about it. Now, I made a comment about one other environment. So what we do in this book, in chapter 14, is sort of a special. In chapter 14, we divide our programs to client and server. And the program on the client are very much like the other programs that we had so far, but the programs on the server side are different, and they don't really implement the genetic algorithm. You will see all that, but they implement all kind of other ways to serve concurrently and implement the fitness function. So it is better, at least in my opinion, to have a separate environment for the server, also because the server can be on another computer. We don't want to bring everything with us. We can have a server running and deployed elsewhere. So what you will see is that there is a folder called server, and there is requirements for the server. There is a separate requirement file. So the recommendation is that on this folder, go into this folder, and you can also open another copy of Visual Studio Code and at that folder, and then create an environment. I call it Venv server, so we just to make sure that we don't confuse the two. Activate that and run the requirement server pip install just the same way that we do here. The same way we do it here, but use the requirement server, because these are very different requirements. Also, one other comment is that one of the things that we do on the server is we deploy, if you want to follow that, we deploy the server as a Lambda service on AWS in the cloud, which I think is one of the most interesting points of this of the book and of these videos. And we use a framework called a tool called Zappa, which is one of the dependencies. What happens is that AWS have a runtime where the Lambda is running on. So let's say that Python 3.15 came out. It may take them a while to provide a Python 3.15 runtime. So they may only be supporting 3.14 at the time. So that's another reason to have the server running perhaps on a different environment, different dependencies, because you may need, even if everything else runs for you in 3.15, let's say, you might have to have the server environment activated with Python 3.14 or 3.12 or something that is already running on AWS. You don't even have to check too much of it. You will see if you try to install the requirements and the Python version is too new for AWS, then the Zappa part of the requirements, it will tell you Zappa does not support it. That actually means that AWS does not have this runtime available. But right now on 3.12, it works. So AWS supports 3.12 already runtime, So we actually have everything here on 3.12. And so when you look at those two environments, they're both 3.12 environments. They're just separate dependencies. A few other comments. First, I need to tell you that when you install any of these dependencies, but more likely if this happens, it will happen already when you install Python, or already happened when you install Python in the past. You may be told, if you run on Windows, that Microsoft Visual C++ has to be installed. That's because Python is implemented with C and C++. So you may have to do this just to be able to run Python programs on your computer. Another way to go about it is run Linux on your Windows, which is very easy nowadays. And this is explained in this link. And then you could follow everything as if you have Linux and run it under the Linux environment, which can be simpler a little bit than Windows, but not such a huge difference. So I think this is all I had to say about setting up. If there are any further issues, you're welcome to contact me, and we can publish updates to this README file, and we will also have hopefully a website where you would be able to find other updates and advice. So now we're ready to start looking at the chapters, and each chapters have several programs, and we will go chapter by chapter and run all these programs and show you what they do. Thank you for joining me.